Welcome to On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. In this gripping YouTube series, Detective Cardinale delves into the most notorious crimes that have captivated America. Which crime will be discussed tonight? Will it be a mass shooting, a murder, a rape, or a bank robbery? Whatever it is, it shocked America. Step into the world of crime investigation as Detective Cardinale uncovers the truth behind the crime. Delve into the web of intrigue surrounding the suspects involved in the crime. Detective Cardinale will analyze their motives, alibis, and connections to the crime. Don't miss out on the thrilling journey of uncovering the truth. On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale goes live on air right now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an all-new episode of On the Case. I'm your host, Detective Alex Cardinale, and tonight we are talking about death by air. We are talking about the killer nurse, William George Davis. We are talking about a murder case from Texas that shocked America. This killer nurse story was featured on ID Discovery See No Evil, and there's also a documentary on the killer nurse on Netflix, and a couple of other documentaries and even a movie have been made about this particular killer nurse. So this killer nurse, William George Davis, worked at a hospital in a small town in Texas. And he was a ICU nurse, and he was responsible for patients that had a heart surgery and also patients that were recovering from a heart attack in the heart section of the hospital. So today we're going to break down the case of William George Davis. It is definitely a crime that shocked and rocked America. If you don't know about this case, you're definitely going to learn about it right here, right now on the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. When I first saw this case on See No Evil, I was like, how can a nurse be so evil? How can a nurse go around murdering its own patients? How can a nurse make its patients his victims? Well, that is exactly what happened here. I guess there's an old saying that goes, you can't trust everybody, because even a nurse can turn bad, a police officer can turn bad, so there are bad people in just about every profession out there. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this show started, and let's learn about the killer nurse, William George Davis. So let's start with a brief overview of the crime. So here is an introduction to everything you should know about the crime. William George Davis was a well-liked nurse in the halls of Christus Trinity Mother Francis Hospital in Tyler, Texas. So it was a very religious hospital in Tyler, Texas. His co-workers described William Davis as affable and friendly. He worked for 5 years with no major disciplinary marks on his record. But then came 2017 and 2018, because in 2017 and 2018, everything changed. Several patients began to suffer massive stroke-like symptoms as they recovered from cardiac surgery. While many of them survived the strokes with permanent damage, 4 people were not so lucky. 4 patients died. At first, they seemed like unfortunate coincidences, but as the hospital began to investigate, they noticed a disturbing pattern. Police said in George Davis' arrest affidavit that on several occasions he was seen on surveillance footage going into the rooms of patients recovering from heart operations moments before their conditions abruptly worsened. As it turned out, William George Davis was injecting air into their IV lines, causing catastrophic neurological damage. His alleged motive was even more sinister. His alleged motive was more money. He told his wife that he was injuring the patients in an attempt to garner more overtime hours. So that is very, very sick that he was doing this to get more money, more pay. All told, William George Davis killed at least 4 people. The victims that he killed was John Lafferty, Ronald Clark, Christopher Greenway, and Joseph Kalina. When the air he injected into their erythroid lines in 2017 and 2018 caused brain damage. William Davis's murderous spree has baffled the friends and families of the victims, but it also stunned those who used to work along with him as co-nurses. One co-nurse said he did not need the overtime. We were very understaffed. There was overtime available for anyone who wanted it, so it doesn't make any sense. My take on William is that he was just a sick guy who wanted to kill. Meanwhile, many loved ones are wondering why Davis singled out their relatives and friends for death. However, one nurse speculates that William did not single out people individually. He was just looking for a way to kill, and it didn't matter who the victim was. He was using it as an excuse for overtime, but in reality, he was fulfilling his sick destiny, which was to kill people as a nurse and try to get away with it with his profession as a scapegoat. So that is a brief overview of the case and everything we are about to discuss right now. So let's discuss death by air, the killer nurse, William George Davis, right here, right now on the case with Detective Alex Cardinale. So here is everything you should know about the case. William George Davis was a nurse at Christus Trinity Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler, Texas. George was a nurse in the heart, aka the cardiac section of the hospital, and he would often tend to those who are recovering from surgery or those who are admitted from heart attacks or strokes. George was struggling financially, and he was getting pressured from his wife to ask for more hours at work so he can get overtime and extra pay. For whatever reason, George lied to his wife. He told his wife his request for extra hours or overtime was denied, and George and his wife were angered by this. However, it was later revealed by his co-workers that had George asked for overtime, it likely would have been granted, and George would have gotten overtime. But for some reason, he lied to his wife. Anyway, George decided to take matters into his own hands and figured he would do something drastic that would cause him to change his life and his patients' lives forever. George would eventually enter the hospital room of his victims, and while attending to their needs, he would open up the IV line and insert air into their IV lines, which is a very calculating maneuver because it is extremely fatal to those recovering from heart procedures or a heart attack. Because what that does, it allows air traveling to the brain, and it causes several adverse reactions, which then leads to a major stroke, which unfortunately left many of the victims unable to come out of, and they sadly died just about an hour or so after the air had been injected. There were some people that did survive, but the stroke had major implications on their lifestyle afterwards. And the four unfortunate people died 1 hour after suffering that fatal stroke from the extra air being forced into their brains. Doctors and other nurses tried desperately to save the patients, but they had not known the root cause. They first assumed it was a mistake by the doctor or severe reactions from the heart attack or the cardiac surgery. But as soon as the head surgeon and head doctor was called to the cardiac ICU section, they ordered CAT scans on each of the victims, and they found something very peculiar for each and every victim. Every victim had air in the brain. Air in the brain is extremely alarming, and the doctors immediately came to an eerie conclusion, and one that I'm sure no doctor would ever want to endure. That conclusion was quite simple, but it was also quite sad and quite unfortunate. That conclusion was that someone in the medical profession, someone in the hospital, is causing these victims to ultimately suffer and die. Sadly, by the time they figured out who it was, someone was internally causing the harm. Many of the victims had already passed away. So by the time they found out who did it, many of the victims are already deceased, unfortunately. So having come to the conclusion that this was an employee problem, that this was an internal problem in the cardiac section of the hospital, the head surgeons and doctors immediately called the police and the FBI, and investigations were launched where the police and doctors would spend hours watching surveillance footage of each of the patient's rooms. Doctors and nurses were looked at. All the doctors and nurses that were scheduled were looked at. Surveillance footage was studied for hours upon hours. And the surveillance footage had the same factor. Nurse William George Davis was the nurse who was seen entering the room when the patient was stable and normal, and he was the last nurse seen leaving before things took a turn for the worst. So immediately, the FBI became suspicious of William George Davis, and they had a hunch that William was the nurse that was causing significant damage to these patients. As soon as it was clear that it was Nurse William Davis, he was immediately fired from his position. And William was very smart because he knew that a criminal investigation was beginning, and he actually phoned the police department to claim that it was accidental and he did not mean to kill 4 of his patients. But ironically, that made things look much worse for him. In the police's eyes and the FBI's eyes, it made him look more guilty. In fact, prior to his firing, a criminal investigation was started weeks before his firing, but in order to make sure that the detectives and the doctors were correct that it was William, they had to look at every single surveillance footage from previous patients that did not have Nurse William, and those previous patients all had one outcome. So the police officers, the FBI, the detective, and the doctors, they had to look over hundreds of hours of surveillance footage. They had to look at rooms where William was not a nurse. They had to look at rooms where William was a nurse. And again, they had to look at rooms where William left as a nurse. But again, It had one grisly outcome. Those that William was not the nurse in, every single one of them had a positive outcome. They recovered successfully and they ended up getting discharged and got home safe and sound. So, 3 weeks into the investigation, it quickly became apparent that this was a deliberate act of violence and murder. And it was quickly apparent that the suspect was, in fact, registered nurse William George Davis. William George Davis was convicted of capital murder for killing 4 patients with air injections after they received heart surgery at Christus Trinity Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler, Texas. Prosecutors claimed that William Davis had at least 11 victims in total, of whom 7 died. 4 of the 7 died within 1 hour after the injection. 2 of them died several days after the injection, and 1 died several months after the injection. So, the life expectancy after the injection of extra air into the brain was not very long. It was either within an hour, within days, or within months. Very, very sad. Charges were only brought against William Davis for 4 of the deaths due to the difficulty in proving the others. From 2017 to 2018, multiple patients experienced unexplained complications after heart surgeries while in recovery. Davis was discovered after doctors observed air in the brains of patients on CT scans. Security footage was also captured of Davis in the patient's rooms just before complications started. He was fired from his job as a nurse at the hospital a month before he was arrested in April 2018. William Davis pled not guilty to the charges. His defense attorney claimed that William Davis was a scapegoat because he was there at the time of the deaths. On October 19th, 2021, William Davis was convicted of capital murder by a Smith County jury. Prosecutors pushed for the death penalty and played a recording of a call from William Davis in jail to his ex-wife, in which he claimed that he wanted to lengthen the patient's time in the intensive care unit so he can earn more overtime. And that voice recording is what did William Davis in. That voice recording is what got him the death penalty. And in my eyes, he definitely deserves the death penalty. The prosecution rejected the claim that the deaths were accidental. On October 27th, 2021, William Davis was sentenced to death after 2 hours of jury deliberation. He appealed this sentence but failed. William Davis was convicted of killing John Lafferty, Ronald Clark, Christopher Greenaway, and Joseph Kalina. The first 3 were killed in 2017, whereas Kalina was attacked in 2018 and died about 2 years later. In his sentencing, he was also accused of killing Perry Frank, James Blanks, and James Sanders, as well as injuring 5 other patients. That is very, very sickening. When you take the oath to be a nurse, your main objective and your main priority is to take care of your patients. When you're a nurse, your main objective is to make sure your patients are okay, to make sure your patients are going to survive, and make sure that your patients are going to get the best absolute health care that you can provide them. It is sickening to know that there are people out there like William Davis who abuse the position of a registered nurse. He was very sick in the head. He knew that if he injected air into cardiac victims, that it would cause adverse reactions that would lead to a fatal stroke, and one that would eventually kill the patient. Very, very sick. This is a very sickening crime case that I came across on ID Discovery. I also came across it on Netflix. There's actually a documentary that talks about killer nurses, and William George Davis is the most recent killer nurse that was brought to infamy and brought to fame because he was talked about a lot, and it was trending in 2017 and 2018 for a while. So that is everything you need to know about the killer nurse, William George Davis. And sadly, it really was death by air, because the air basically suffocated the brain and the patient suffered. It was a very painful experience for the 4 people that did die almost instantly. All right now we're going to go ahead and take a quick intermission. During this intermission, you're going to hear about some special upcoming live streams coming up on my YouTube channel, The Real Alex Cardinale. When we come back from this live stream, when we come back from this intermission, I am going to share my thoughts on this crime case, and then we will wrap up this episode of On the Case with me, Detective Alex Cardinale. So don't go anywhere. We're back with more right after this.
Come and see how this Oreo cookies and cream cheesecake from Crumble tastes. It will be the very first Crumble cookie review on Saturday Live in 2024. Alex Cardinale will taste and review the cookies and cream cheesecake live Saturday, August 10th, 2024, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
Get ready for an epically loaded Saturday Live. An all-new episode of Saturday Live with Alex Cardinale, August 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on YouTube channel, The Real Alex Cardinale. Learn about the grizzly bear as our animal of the week. Our pet of the week will be the beautiful Dachshund. For the first time ever on Saturday Live with Alex Cardinale will review the new Crumble cookies and cream cheesecake and give you a taste test of it. Plus, Alex will have facts on Peacock, Publix, and golf. There will be a Oasis Aquatics featured fish. Aqua Alex will have aquarium facts, and learn 30 things about Alex Cardinale just 1 week prior to turning 31. All that and more, including Karens of the Week, Assholes of the Week, Yankee Spotlight, and more. Live August 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, YouTube channel, The Real Alex Cardinale. Be there or be square.
Saturday night.
Alex Cardinale, your host of today's live stream, will be turning 31 years old very soon. He is inviting you to be part of his 31st birthday celebration. He will be hosting a 31st birthday bash one day after his birthday. It will air live Friday, August 16, 2024, at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. It will be an awesome show and you are all invited. Come one, come all. Come and celebrate Alex's birthday. There will be lots of fun. Alex will show any new tropical fish he got. What cool fish will he get this time? Alex will also give an update on his current aquarium and also future aquarium plans. Plus, Alex will discuss what his goals are for the next year, play some of his favorite music, he will bake some awesome desserts, and so much more. Viewers are encouraged to tune in and have a good time. There will be a few surprises in store as well. A huge announcement will be made. What could it be? Happy 31st birthday, Alex Cardinale. Live Friday, August 16, 2024, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on YouTube channel The Real Alex Cardinale.
Welcome back to On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. Tonight we have been talking about death by air, the killer nurse, William George Davis. And this was a very tragic case. Who would have thunk that a nurse would go around killing his patients? So now it's time for me to share my thoughts on this case. I think that this is an extremely disturbing crime case, and it's one that is very unique because you never think that a nurse would openly and willingly cause cardiac victims and cardiac surgery patients to suffer a tragic, painful death. It is absolutely sickening. It is absolutely disgusting that it went on, and I'm glad that he got the death penalty. I think the death penalty is the only thing that he should have gotten. He should not be able to rot in jail while there are people out there that are losing their loved ones. People lost their husbands, people lost their fathers, their brothers, their grandfathers. So it really is a shame that this happened. So there's evil in all types of people, whether they're a police officer, a doctor, a nurse, or a chef. There are killers everywhere. You just never know when they can strike and how they can strike. So, but on the other token, there are plenty of amazing nurses out there. There are some great nurses out there also. So I think it's very important that I end this episode on that note. I think while George Davis is a awful nurse, a terrible nurse, probably the world's worst nurse, there are other nurses out there that save lives for a living, and they do a great job saving lives in the meantime. But by no means is William Davis the only killer nurse. There are a couple of other killer nurses that we're going to focus on, including on the next episode of On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale, because we're going to crack another killer nurse. On the next episode of On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale, we're going to focus on the extreme killer nurse, Charles Cullen. And this guy was more deadly and more devastating than William George Davis. This is William Davis on steroids, because Charles Cullen confessed to killing up to 40 people in 9 hospitals and 1 nursing home during the 16 years he worked as a nurse in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. However, there are some detectives that suspect his number of victims to be significantly higher. So, on the next episode of On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale, learn about the extreme killer nurse, Charles Cullen, aka Charles Cullen. That'll be on the next episode of On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. And that is this episode of On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. I hope you enjoyed this episode of On the Case. I hope you learned a little bit about this case, and I hope you learned about the evil man, William George Davis. Remember, if you see something, say something. Never be afraid to report a crime. Dial 911. 911 is your best friend, but also 911 should only be used for emergencies. With that being said, thank you for tuning in to On the Case with Detective Alex Cardinale. Stay safe, everyone. And I, Detective Alex Cardinale, will see you for the next crime that I get to crack. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for watching this live stream on the Real Alex Cardinale YouTube channel. We hope you enjoyed today's live stream. Whether you learned about tropical fish, a crime, an American tragedy, or had fun on Saturday Live, your view is what keeps the great content coming. Thank you for supporting Alex Cardinale and watching this live. It's hard to believe we are quickly approaching 11 years together. Get ready for a big 11-year celebration taking place in New Jersey. Special thanks to our sponsor Oasis Aquatics for helping our channel grow. Looking for quality tropical fish? Check out oasisaquaticsnj.com. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Share this video on social media and let your friends view too. Remember, sharing is caring. Subscribe for more awesome videos. Thanks for watching and stay legendary. Goodbye for now. We will see you on the next live.